Well, you can go ahead and grab a seat this morning. And thrilled you're here. Didn't necessarily think that I was going to start the message off that way, but that's totally okay. I think God's going to do something huge this morning. I want to go and invite my wife to come out and join me for a moment. So first, it's hot. The heat's working. Woo! I feel like for the past 3 weeks, I just come up on stage and strip. Like it's happening over and over again. And that was a male voice cheering, which is feeling a little uncomfortable about that. But I got my wife, so she can back me up right now. So which seat are you sitting in? You're sitting in this seat. Okay. I don't want to steal her seat. That'd be rude. So we were going to be doing, as you know, we've been answering these questions, and we were slotted this morning to answer the question, you know, why is racial tension still so deep in 2019? Why is there still problems with segregation, especially on Sunday mornings? And that was slotted for this morning, and I recognize that I have only one viewpoint from it. And so I wanted to get another voice in on that, and I found out yesterday that person wasn't able to make it this morning, and so we're going to push that message back 3 weeks. So we're still going to do it, but I want to do a good job with it, and so we're going to skip over Call an Audible, and we're going to talk about the number one asked question in the church. And so we took all the voting, all the numbers from it, and this question was asked twice as much as any of the other ones. And that is, how do you raise godly children in 2019? Now, before we get into it, this is not a message just for parents. So we know that a lot of you, like we have 8 gajillion kids in this church, and that we love it that way. It's great. There's an entire party going back in Rise Kids right now. But for some of you all, like maybe you kids are out of the home. Maybe you haven't had kids yet. Maybe you don't want to have kids, and like whatever it is for you, that's fine. But like, no matter what season you're in, this message is going to apply in a big way. So I want to read a quote from you from Ronald Reagan, of all people. And then I want to put my own spin on it. Not that my quote's better, but I feel like he's got some good principles in it. So in March of 1961, Ronald Reagan said this: "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in the United States where men were free." It was a powerful statement, you know, that the idea that freedom is literally just one generation away from no longer being present. And so I want to take that statement, I'm going to twist it a little bit and put my own spin on it. So you can't quote me on this, but you can. Me and good old Ronnie tag teamed on this one. Faith is never more than one generation away from extinction. We don't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years watching our children and our children's children live a life that is consumed by the absence of faith. And the truth is that we are literally, and this is the case for every generation, we are one generation away from this no longer being present. And speaking of this, can someone turn the house lights up so I can see beautiful faces and they can take awesome notes because it's going to be a good message? It really, we are one generation away from faith being extinct. And let me kind of just, I'm going to stand. I feel like I got to stand. I want to sit next to you. You're awesome, but I got to stand. So statistically, back in Rise Kids, which if you don't know, 1 out of every 3 people in our church is under the age of 12 and is back there. It's awesome. I love it. That's how the church should be. We will never close our kids' ministry because we want it full and packed and love it. So what's going on back there statistically? The majority of kids that are back there are going to disown their faith by college. Like that's a problem. Like that's a big problem. So I got 3 of them back there. So statistically, our kids are going to disown their faith. There's a chance of it by the time they hit college. And I mean, we could like sweep it under the rug, but the truth is that if we don't pass it on, there's a big problem right there. And it's not their fault. It lies within this room to pass on the baton of faith to the next generation. If you go all the way back in the kids area, if you get past the check-in or break by security or whatever you got to do, please don't do that. We'll take you out. But if you do make it back there somehow and you go around the corner, you'll see this big banner in the very back, and it talks about passing on the praiseworthy deeds to the next generation. That's part of our responsibility, to pass it on to the next group of people. And the cool thing is the generation before us did it. And the generation before that did it. And the generation before that did it. And the generation, okay, you're getting it now, all right. There's been roughly 100% of passing it on. Has everything been perfect? No, there's some people that maybe didn't get it, people that slipped through the cracks, people that got frustrated, people that got hurt. Yes, but the church is still alive right now. I mean, look around. This room is packed right now. This is awesome. There's church is happening right now, and it's because people have passed it on generation after generation after generation after generation. But now it is our job, church, to pass it on to the next generation, right? And so I just want to give you a couple thoughts, and then I'm going to let Erica share all the good stuff because that's how it normally happens. But it is the parents' responsibility to pass their faith on. It is. The idea that you can take your kids, throw them in a minivan, and toss them back in kids' church and expect them to grasp their faith is a huge, huge lie. It is the parents' responsibility to pass the faith on to their kids. That being said, there is a responsibility within the church. If you've ever been a part of a child dedication, a lot of times what it looks like is the pastor grabs the baby or doesn't grab hands off the baby, we don't steal babies, and like holds it up and says, we're going to pray over this child, that God would use them in their life. I'm standing again. And it's like, church, do you accept this child as a part of our church family? And the whole church says, yes, we do. And that's because there's a parent responsibility, there's also a church family responsibility to it. And I think the reason why we have a lot of kids that are struggling with their faith is because we have parents that are ill-equipped to be godly parents. And I think the reason why we have a lot of parents that are ill-equipped to be godly parents is because we have a lot of broken churches. And when I say broken churches, I don't mean what's happening right now. Like, this is good, this is awesome, worship team, nailed it, Mike, beautiful prayer, like the coffee was ready, donuts were out there, I had like a plate of them myself, like all that stuff worked great, kids ministry is working, like that's not church though. That's a part of church, that's the action of going to church, but church looks a little bit different. Church is, when I think of church, I think of it being what Acts chapter 2:42 says. And I just want to read a little bit of Acts 2:42 for you so you can get an idea of what church really looked like at the very, very beginning. Because a lot of the reason why we have spiritually sick kids is because we have spiritually sick families that come from spiritually sick churches. And that's because we just do this Sunday morning thing and not this all-encompassing life thing. So in Acts chapter 2, verse 42, it says, and they... And I think we got it on the screen, awesome. They would be believers, so that would be us. Like if you are a part of this church right now, raise your hand. Great, all of us. So this is you. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, hallelujah, and the prayers. And awe came among every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. Verse 46, day by day, attending the temple together. That would be church, breaking bread in their homes. That would be at home or groups. They received their food with glad and generous hearts, so they love food, thankful for that verse. And praising God, they had favor with all people, and the Lord added to the number day by day those who were being saved. That is what church is right there. It's not an event. It's not a thing you check off. Although that's part of it, like you do want to come to church. Church attendance is important, but it's so much more than that. It's having relationship with people. We talk about the fact that real community doesn't happen in rows like you're in right now, but it happens in circles. And Acts 2:42 church, I believe, is the antidote for spiritually sick families that raise spiritually sick children. And we need to be in community like that. And so I just want to throw that kind of first statement out there, that there is the parent responsibility, but there also is the church responsibility. If a parent is involved in an Acts 2:42 family, their parenting will get better. If a grandparent is involved in an Acts 2:42 church family, parenting at the church level will get better. If a married person without kids is involved in an Acts 2:42 church family, parenting gets better at the church. If a single person is involved in an Acts 2:42 church, our parenting gets better. If an empty nester or a divorced person or somebody who's lost a child or even a child themselves is involved in an Acts 2:42 church family, parenting gets better. So if you're a parent, this message is for you. If you're not a parent or you're not in that parent season of young kids, this message is for you because we need all of us in this church family thing. So with that being said, getting that framework right there, Erica, tell us how to really parent. Like, give me some tips. How do I become a better dad? Help me out.
Even turn my microphone on, so I don't know how much I'd listen. No, but I wouldn't call these necessarily pro tips, but I think a lot of our parenting successes in life really are contingent on our posture. You know, first of all, Michael's talking about the positioning of yourself within an Acts 2:42 kind of setting where you can have that support, because as we've heard said time and time again, it takes a village to raise a child. It's not just one person, it's not just a couple. We really need outside influence. And you have to decide what kind of influences those are that are going to be speaking into the lives of your children and helping to shape them, because that's really an important thing. And I think if you're going to look at the example of somebody who really did it right, you can kind of look to the Bible for the perfect child, and so hopefully their parents did something right too. But looking at Jesus and his life and the challenges even that he presented, even as a perfect child to his family, we can draw a lot from the parenting style of Mary and Joseph.
Can you imagine being Jesus' mom?
He'd tell her every time, and what could she say? It's like the current parenting situation of society now. You can't say anything to kids because they'll call CPS. But if you position yourself in the right posture, you'll be okay. So what I mean by that is your posture in your private life, how you position yourself and posture yourself before the Lord, and also your public posture, how you present yourself not only out in public but in front of your child. When I say your posture before the Lord, are you committing to him your life, your child? You know, you can't expect to be a godly parent if you aren't being parented by God, and how you do that is in relationship with him. So your relationship with your child is going to struggle if your relationship with the Lord is not in alignment. So if you're struggling to have, you know, that godly lifestyle represented in your children, you need to look at yourself first. And how are you doing that both in public and in private? Because it starts with your private relationship with the Lord. You know, we have great resources in the communities that we have and in the church and among different relationships. And so it's great to be able to talk with others about their parenting experience and advice. And the Bible tells us to seek wisdom. If any of you lacks knowledge, you should seek the Lord. Now, it doesn't say you should seek each other, and that doesn't mean that that's wrong, but first you need to take your questions about parenting to the Lord, because he is the father of you, of your children, of all creation. And so he's going to have the answer, but he's also going to be able to, you know, point you to the people who are going to be able to help you. You know, my word of advice, if you will, is to listen with a careful ear, but then you need to decide prayerfully what of that advice really is going to work for your family. No two children are alike, so you could have, you know, our pastor from our previous church has 10 children, and he and his wife will tell you that not a single one of them is exactly the same. So your parenting techniques can't even be the same across the board. And so how could you figure this out without really leaning into the Lord and his understanding? So you need to seek that wisdom, you know, from those around you, but specifically from the Lord, because he knows your child and your child's heart. He created them. He knows what's going to work, and he can help you to be that primary minister in their life to really encourage them in their growth. And something that's so neat, you know, other than being Jesus's mom about Mary, is that from the very beginning, she was just so open-handed about this child that was to be given to her. I mean, she's kind of the textbook case of every motherhood scenario. She started out with an unexpected pregnancy as she went through the single motherhood, and then the engaged with the child, you know, kind of awkward phase, and then, you know, had the baby and was married. And so she had, you know, all these different phases, so she could really relate without, you know, realizing what the future would hold to every kind of season of motherhood or parenthood. I mean, the same goes for dads. There's a lot of single dads who are doing this thing. But she said when she got the news of this unexpected pregnancy in Luke 1:38, Behold, I'm the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. And so she said, God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. This is crazy. Everybody's going to write me off. Like, this is impossible. But if this is what you have given to me, I accept it as a blessing. And she held throughout her motherhood an open hand. She says over and over again in Luke 1 and 2, which kind of chronicle Jesus' childhood, it says, Mary treasured up all these things, pondering them in her heart. So every time there was a big event concerning her child, she wasn't quick to go out and, tell everybody about it or to have a knee-jerk reaction, but she considered what was going on with her child and really considered it in her heart. What is it, God, that you are teaching not only my child, but me through this situation?
I love how you've, just not to interrupt you because it's so good, but there's some, I love how you've mentioned that, we're like in this information age right now where you can Google anything and everything. And so there's not a lack of understanding from the world's perspective, but sometimes we just need to seek the author of everything rather than the author of whatever you Google. Yeah. And not only that, but that we're so quick right now to want to broadcast all of our parenting moments. Like, take a picture, post a story, post a whatever, like email it, tweet it, whatever you do. And like we're so public about this that we miss the private moments, the treasuring in the heart, or the moment where God's depositing on there. And I know for me, like you're just speaking right now, and I'm like, man, I got to fix everything.
Well, I think that, the biggest piece for me out of my motherhood journey, if you can boil it down to one, is what has surprised me the most has been how much the Lord has really used parenthood to transform me. You think that you're acquiring this great responsibility of raising a child, and that's true, but God has so much to do in and through you through that process. And if you take that opportunity, like Mary, to really, consider what is happening before you, or consider your responses to your child, or what you're going to do, or, all the facets of parenthood, God's going to transform you and your heart. And he will use that as a sanctification process for sure, if you allow him, but to reflect not only on, God, what should I do with this child, especially in those difficult moments, but God, how am I being the child here? What is it that you want me to learn? How am I, being obedient or disobedient to you in this moment? What would you have me to do to steward this child and to change my life? And so I think, having that perspective, that private posture before the Lord is so important in a reflective nature, so that you understand what God's doing with your child and with you, but obviously being the anchor of what you do. And then as far as publicly, if that's not playing out for you privately, your relationship with the Lord and seeking him on all facets of life, but particularly with your parenting, you cannot expect that that's going to be what you're demonstrating to your child. And so it's very much this monkey see, monkey do. For better or for worse, your child is going to want to be like you at some point in their life. Now, how you handle that and steward that, they may end up one day saying they don't want to be like you, but the way that it works out is that they will become you anyway. So something that I was challenged with, you hear all the time kids looking up to their parents, I want to be just like you. And I hadn't really had that moment, but Noelle said to me, like right around the New Year, she said, Mommy, I want to be like you. And, it was a really sweet thing, but I was like, God, maybe that's kind of my New Year's thing this year. Like, I need to really consider, and I know this isn't like rocket science, particularly if you're not a parent, because we're all perfect parents until we become parents. But it was like, wow, am I being the person? If she's trying to be like me, am I being the person that I want her to be when she grows up? And that was just one of those profound moments that I'd thought about that before, but in that moment where she said, I really, I want to be like you, Mommy. I'm like, wow. Is the person who I'm being in her life every day, pointing her back to the Lord, is that who I am today? Is that who I want her to be today or when she grows up? And that was just a really sobering moment. So the private practices dictate the public display of those, and in turn will help to shape your child and what their future is going to be.
And to throw a generational aspect on that, that doesn't just exist within the mother-daughter or mother-son or father-son, father-daughter. But I know for me, I frequently look back at and still lean on my dad, who's in his 70s, on how he parented me and how he even still parents me. And so for those of you that are grandparents, like, think about the multiplicative effect you have, like that you are being a parent to a parent that eventually will become a parent. Like there's this process in there. And then if you're going the other way, as a younger person, and I remember when I was young, I would always go, I'm never going to be like my parents. And now I'm like, my parents were the greatest thing. It's amazing what happens when you grow up. But when you're looking up, it's important to say, hey, am I looking up at role models that I see growing closer to Christ? Because this is a family dynamic. If you want to have healthy kids and you want to parent well, it's more than just the relationship between one parent and one child. There is an all-encompassing community family aspect into it. So no matter what direction you look, I don't know if this is the right dance for it, but this is what I'm doing. There needs to be this idea of learning from the people that are having the walk that you want them to have and that you want to have in your life as well.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with those people who are also, choosing to submit their hearts to the Lord, and is so important. Actually, if you look in Luke 2:32 through 40, it says, "When they'd performed everything according to the law of the Lord, they being Mary and Joseph, they returned to Galilee to their own town of Nazareth. And the child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him." And you'll notice it was when they had submitted themselves to the Lord, and when they were doing what they were supposed to, Jesus followed in their footsteps. You fast forward to verse 51 through 52, and it says, "And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them." So when they're submitting themselves to the Lord, then Jesus was submitting himself to them and to the Lord. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. And I think if there's a prayer for you to be praying over your child, sometimes we wonder, well, how do I pray with for my child? I don't know how to make that concise, but I think this really sums up a lot of what our heart can be for them as we just ask God to bless their lives, that they would grow in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man, that their relationship would blossom with the Lord, and in so doing, that they would experience his favor and the favor of those around them.
And thinking about the Ten Commandments, as you were saying about this, I was thinking about that commandment that talks about, you should honor your father and mother, like talking about that part of it. I didn't like that verse when I was a kid, because I was that kid, which probably comes as no surprise to you all. But as I'm at the season now where that verse is in my benefit, if you will, I'm beginning to flip it and go, well, maybe it's not so much for me about honoring my mother and father, although I still do honor my father and mother. But for me, I need to be a father or mother that's honorable. And that's the big thing. We don't want to just demand honor from a child. Rather, we need to live our lives in such a way where honor is given because of how we're acting and because of how we're behaving. And so I want to be somebody where I know that the verse is in my favor for honor, but I want to live in such a way where even if that verse wasn't there, my kids would go, I'm going to do that anyways.
And I think we love to throw out that Ephesians verse that says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, Amen. For this is right. Honor your father and mother." This is first commandment with a promise that it may go well with you and you may live a long life. That sounds good. Okay, well, if we obey our parents, then things are going to be good. But it turns back to the parents in that too. Verse 4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger." Don't provoke your children, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. I think a lot of times I've caught myself being the one provoking a situation. Sometimes we set our child up to sin. If they're going to lie to you and you ask them to tell you something, don't set that trap. They're going to fall into it. Or that they're in a situation where they're going to be tempted to do something. Just don't set them up for that. But also, it's easy if they're annoying you to get maybe a little bit sarcastic. Maybe I'm just a heathen mom, but after a while of correction, I bust out the sarcasm, which is a little bit of my style of humor. But it's not an appropriate thing to do with them, and I've had to really go to the Lord and, ask him to purify my heart of that and my responses to where I'm not provoking them, that my response, even if I have to take a minute before I respond, that's not an expression of weakness or them thinking, oh, she didn't know what to do, I stumped her, but really reflecting on, God, give me the right words and the right disposition to handle this in the way that's going to honor you and, to honor their hearts and to bring them up the way that I would want to see them treat their own children one day.
So let's talk discipline for a minute. That's one of the big ones in 2019. Because kids are going to screw up. Like, it's just gonna happen. If you have a child, they have done something wrong. You can tell they're sinners after like day 2. It's just, that's what kids are. It's in the blood. Like, the faith isn't passed on in the blood, but the sin is passed on. Like, just hang out with a room of 3-year-olds. Lord have mercy, you see.
We're taking preschool volunteers and Rise Kids.
We are.
See me after church.
So like, what do you do when the child is being that way? Like, how does discipline work? And so the famous passage is in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24. Whoever spares the rod hates his son. And I am fully in favor of this verse. But let me qualify it, because I think many times we take this verse and do not look at it the correct way. Because the traditional way of it, and when I say traditional, I mean traditional in American viewpoint, is that spare the rod, hate the child. That means we've got to take out a rod, like go outside, grab a rod, wherever you get your rods from, and take the child and bend him over and like, whoosh, and that's how you do discipline right there. And
not in our house.
Yeah, no, we do not do the get the rod from the back of the woods. We keep our rods somewhere else. Whether or not you are somebody who is more like on the spanking line or not so much, that's actually not the primary thing that's being interpreted right here. Discipline is being interpreted, and when you see the word rod, that is something that a shepherd would use. And a shepherd uses a rod for 3 things. Number 1, guidance. When a sheep gets a little bit off, they take the rod and they try to guide them back a little bit more. It's also if an animal comes and is trying to harm the sheep, they use the rod as a defense weapon. And the rod, the third thing is that it's an extended reach. And so I think the principle behind this, no matter if you choose that side or not, and that's totally up to you, there's a lot of ways to look through that. And if you want to ask us on our personal opinions, you can. We're not going to say them right now because of CPS. Kidding. You were hoping I wouldn't say that. You just give me that's the marriage nod. You all know what that is. The purpose of this is that we need to be parents that guide our children. And guiding your child is so much more than yelling at them, pulling them aside, and giving them a spanking. Like the idea that you can just take a child when something happens, bring them to the side, deal with that, that's not guidance at all. That is reactive parenting right there. We want to be proactive in that. That means anticipating what's going on in life. What are their challenges? Being in their life, engaged in it in such a way where you can help guide them in the moments that are taking place. And not only that, we're supposed to be protecting our kids. Hello, social media. Hello, internet. Like, there's so much scary, like legitimately scary stuff out there. If you're a parent of a child who has a cell phone and you aren't following them on every single social media platform they have, there's a good chance that you're failing in many areas as a parent. Now, that's a pretty big statement right there, but we're supposed to be protecting our kids, and that means knowing what's going on in their life and guarding them from things. And the third thing is the extended reach. You don't know everything that's going on in your kids' lives. You will never know everything that's going on in your kids' lives. But the culmination of your church family or your extended family or your school family or your soccer club family or whichever one it is, that will have a much further reach than just you as one person or as a couple as 2 people. And so if you're going to really use the rod and be able to have an extended reach, that means being on the same page and helping, getting more information from people that are around you and using the resources you can. And as I've talked with parents that I used to always wonder why my mom knew everything. Like there was things that she knew that she was not supposed to know, and I had no idea how she knew. I thought she was like a wizard or something like that. And then I realized, she talks to my friend John's mom. And that's why she knows all the things that happen over at John's house. Like because she was in community and there was this collaboration going on. I remember my dad would always tell me when he would get in trouble in school, apparently there's this generational thing of this, that like when he would get in trouble, the teacher would discipline him. If he got home and his parents weren't there, the neighbor would discipline him. And then when his parents got home, his mom would discipline him, and then his dad would discipline him. There was this community aspect to it. You weren't getting anything by. You weren't slipping under the radar by any means. And if you're a kid and your parents are disciplining you, be thankful. You will be grateful for it in 10, 15, 20 years, or maybe even next week. It is a great thing to be able to have the rod in your life. And then it goes on in a couple chapters later saying, train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he gets old, he will not depart from it. Training up your child does not mean dropping them off at church and spanking them when they're bad. That is not training. That is babysitting at best. What training up your child means is being engaged in their life, knowing what's going on, teaching them what it means to read the Bible, both publicly and in your private life. Like, if you want to be a good, godly parent, you need to be engaged with what's going on in their life. It's hard work. It's not easy, but talk to some of these people that are in our church that have kids that still love Jesus 30 years later, and you'll see they were intentional about the things that were going on during the season when they were parents. And
I just add to that, with that relational aspect, not being afraid of your children's challenges, be that, anything developmental or, them directly as children or, teenagers or young adults, challenging the things that you have taught them in their faith, because, we don't want children or adults to have blind faith. We need them to be able to hash that out, with you and with the Lord, and come to own for themselves why it is that they believe what they believe. So don't be afraid of those difficult conversations, even if you don't have the answers. Like, go on that journey with them. It's okay. Jesus was sent out into the wilderness to work out his faith and to learn how to get through temptation. And the same thing, as adults, God's discipline continues in our life, and not because he's a God who, is punitive and loves to see us suffer, but he realizes that through any form of discipline, we grow in our strength and in our faith, and it's his way of empowering us. So empower your children with the resources to grow in their faith. We use a curriculum called Orange in the kids ministry, and there's a number of resources that we'll email out to you this week, but there's an app you can put on your phone, and it will talk to you about what we've studied this week and how you can help with the memory verses that they're doing, and just how to engage your child in what they're learning in church and understand their faith. So don't steer away from difficult moments, steer into them, and that's going to help them to navigate those different speed bumps in life.
And that's a great resource, Orange. I would highly suggest using it. And I would also suggest checking what things are out there on the internet for helping to equip your kids when it comes to Bible stories and things of that nature. I don't know if you all know the Bible app that's out there. You go in the App Store or Google Play and you look for Bible. It's the first one, but there's a kids version of it. And we've done it with our kids for 6 years straight now. And so we finished it, it's done. And so I was like, well, great, wonderful. We finished it, let's go find a new one. So we downloaded a new Bible app and started going through it, and the stories were wrong. Like they were teaching things that weren't in the Bible and getting things wrong. Like it was an absolute disaster right there. And it's important to be going behind and making sure that your kids aren't learning fake things because the app is screwed up or whatever's going on. Like, be engaged. And one of the things you can do is, use Orange. We've vetted it. It seems really, really good, but check it for yourself. Just like when we're preaching through things, it's your responsibility to make sure that the Bible is being read accurately. I mean, I'll be judged accordingly, but you want to do your own research and make sure that you're embracing your own faith, which is extremely important. And so I'm going to go and invite the worship team back on. I want to kind of put a cap on this way. The answer to how you raise godly kids in 2019 is you have godly parents. That is the ultimate answer right there. If you want to raise godly kids, you need to have godly parents. If you want to see godly parents, they need to be involved in an Acts 2:42 community. And it really is that simple. Now, walking it out is much more difficult. And I love that we're at a church that looks a lot like the book of Acts. Because I don't know if, I think Trevor and Shelly, they're somewhere, I don't know where they are, but I saw them here earlier. Like, they're married, they have no kids. Because they just got married, and they'll probably, we have the wave of all the people that got married last year. We'll probably have 800 new kids that come to our church pretty soon, but they are involved in parenting our church. Because I saw them 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were back in the kids ministry, working in a kids classroom, helping to shape the lives of kids and making sure that the next generation doesn't miss it. I look at Mike and Ramey who are over here. Like, you don't have little ones at home, and you love it, and you've told us that, which is wonderful. Unless you have your grandkids over, which is great. But you're an example of what it means to have kids that still love Jesus when they're our age. And so because of that, there's questions that I'll ask. There's questions people here will ask, how did you make that happen? When you wanted to strangle your child, how did you not do that? Like, give me some, it is not just a only parents thing. It is a church family thing. And so I want to close out this way. At the beginning, I said that we're how many generations away from losing our faith? One generation away. And with as quick as it seems like time goes by, every single year, faster and faster and faster, that's happening really, really, really quick. We're one generation away. So how many of you in here have a relationship with a child in some capacity? Raise your hand. All right, we're batting roughly 1,000% right now. Stand up if that's you. If that's you, stand up. If you have influence over the next generation, that's a gift that you have influence. That's also a big responsibility that you have influence. Like, I don't want to be over dramatic right now, but like if we, the Standers right now, screwed up, there's big problems. And we really could. Like, if we wanted to, we could have a meeting on how to screw it up, and I'm sure we do a great job screwing it up, and the church would die next generation. We don't want that to happen. Rather than that taking place, I want to see God give wisdom to how you are able to pour into the next generation. We'll always be about that. We're always going to continue to do that. And so if you have influence over a child in some way, I want to pray for you this morning. This is big. This is church family right here. If you have influence over a child, I want you to come down to the altar right here in the front, make your way forward, and I just want to pray over you guys right now. If you're able to, if you're not able to slip out, please stay where you are. God, I pray for each and every single person that's down here right now. God, they have walked forward. They've gotten out of their seat. They've activated themselves physically in this moment. And God, they recognize the influence and the privilege and the responsibility they have to help shape the next generation. God, I pray that this group, myself included, would not fall short on passing the mantle on. God, I pray that you would give each of them wisdom well beyond their years. God, on how to be aunts, how to be uncles, how to be cousins, how to be kids workers, how to be parents, grandparents, how to be great-grandparents even. God, I pray that you give them wisdom on how to walk in that particular role. God, I pray that you give them patience. I pray that you give them discernment. God, I pray that when people come and look at the children in the Rise Church, they would be astonished because of the great job that's happening of us passing on the baton. And so, God, I pray that they would have a hunger for you, God. They would know more about you, that they would consult you, that, God, in order for them to become better influencers, Lord, that you would influence them more. And Holy Spirit, we know that you equip us for good works, as you say in the Bible. And we know that raising the next generation is a good work. And so, God, I ask in the name of Jesus, by the power of the Holy Spirit, that you would equip these influencers. In Jesus' name, amen. If you look to your left and your right now, this is what family looks like right here. Like, we're not in our seats anymore. Some of us are, and that's totally fine. But like, this is what it looks like to be church family. This has been going on for a long, long, long time. And the fun thing is when you're around people, like, you can hear them breathe, you can hear them sniff, you can hear them cough, you can hear them sing. There's like a we're in this together kind of moment. And I think just to wrap up this morning, could we just, as a group down here in the front, I'm going to come hang out with you guys for a second. And could we just worship Jesus together as the worship team leads us, lifting our voice up to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
All the earth will shout your praise. Our
church for helping me raise my kids, for being a part of this with me as I walk through this process as well, Eric and I, of passing our faith on to the next generation. And I pray for those of you that have kids, that it would be your responsibility to do that you would own it, that you would embrace it, that you would pass it on like it is one generation from falling short. And I just love being around you guys. I really do. Like, I love it. I love being a part of the church family. I hope that as we head out these doors, give some kids some high fives as they walk down. If they ignore you, they still love you, I promise. I hope you have a great, great week, and we will see you next week for church. May God bless you, and we will see you later.